The helicopter rotors scream against the desert wind as dust swirls through the open cabin door. 6 Navy SEALs are pinned down behind a crumbling wall in hostile territory, ammunition running dangerously low. Radio static crackles with desperate calls for extraction that go unanswered. Enemy fighters close in from 3 sides, their shadows growing longer in the setting sun. Among them, Sarah Mitchell presses herself against the concrete, her hands trembling as she clutches a tactical radio. The team doesn't even look at her for solutions. She's just the support specialist they brought along because protocol demanded it. The one they made wash their gear and fetch their coffee for 6 months straight, calling it tradition and earning her place. Her voice cracks as she tries to call for backup again, and the squad leader, Lieutenant Harris, snatches the radio from her hands with disgust. If you're enjoying this intense story, hit that subscribe button and let us know which country you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories coming. Sarah Mitchell was supposed to be just another communication specialist attached to SEAL Team 7, a pencil pusher with a security clearance who happened to score high enough on physical tests to tag along on missions. At 5'4" with wire-rimmed glasses that constantly slipped down her nose, she was everything the elite operators thought didn't belong in their world. They saw her Harvard degree in linguistics and her quiet demeanor as proof she was just another disc jockey playing soldier. What they didn't know was that Sarah Mitchell had spent 12 years of her childhood in military academies across Eastern Europe, where her diplomat father was stationed. She didn't just speak 7 languages fluently, she had been trained in Soviet-era tactical combat by a former Spetsnaz instructor who ran an underground fighting school in Prague. Her father had enrolled her secretly after local bullies had targeted her for being American. For years, she learned Sistema, urban warfare tactics, and most importantly, strategic command principles that dated back to Cold War special operations. She had mastered the art of reading battlefield dynamics like chess moves, seeing patterns where others saw chaos. But she kept it all hidden, having learned long ago that being underestimated was sometimes the greatest weapon of all. For 6 months, Sarah endured every humiliation SEAL Team 7 threw at her. They made her carry extra weight on marches while calling her weak. They forced her to clean their weapons after missions, claiming she needed to learn respect for the tools. Lieutenant Harris had even made her recite radio frequencies while doing push-ups in the mud, laughing when she collapsed from exhaustion. The worst part wasn't the physical hazing, it was how they dismissed every tactical suggestion she made. During mission briefings, when she'd point out vulnerabilities in their plans using this strategic analysis she'd learned in Prague, they'd roll their eyes and tell her to stick to radios. 3 missions had gone sideways because of routes she'd warned them against, but they blamed bad intel rather than admit she'd been right. Now, trapped in this kill box with enemies closing in, Sarah watched the same arrogance cloud their judgment. Harris was preparing to make a frontal assault, a suicide run that would get them all killed. Her hand stopped shaking as she recognized the enemy formation. It was a classic Chechen rebel encirclement pattern, one she'd studied extensively in those underground Prague sessions.
As Harris barked orders for the suicide charge, Sarah suddenly stood up, her voice cutting through the chaos with an authority none of them had ever heard before. She began speaking rapid-fire Russian into the enemy's captured radio frequency, her accent so perfect it sounded native. The incoming fire hesitated, confused. But that was just the beginning. Sarah grabbed the tactical map from Harris's hands and began repositioning the team with precise, sharp commands. When Petty Officer Rodriguez hesitated, she grabbed his shoulder, looked him dead in the eye, and explained in 15 seconds how the enemy would react to each movement. Her analysis was so detailed, so impossibly accurate, that he moved without another question. She directed Thompson and Williams to specific positions that seemed exposed, but created a perfect crossfire pattern. Then, still speaking Russian on the enemy radio, she fed false intelligence about American reinforcements approaching from the north. As the enemy fighters began to shift their positions to counter a threat that didn't exist, Sarah had already anticipated their movement patterns. The SEALs watched in stunned silence as their weak communications specialist orchestrated a tactical masterpiece. She wasn't just calling out positions, she was predicting enemy responses 3 moves ahead, like a grandmaster playing speed chess with live ammunition. When she suddenly grabbed Harris's rifle and fired 3 precise shots at exact angles to create ricochets that sounded like they came from multiple positions, even the hardened operators couldn't hide their shock. Just as the SEALs thought they had a clear path to extraction, The thundering sound of an enemy technical vehicle rounded the corner, a mounted .50 caliber gun that would tear through their position in seconds. The SEALs froze. They were out of explosives, too exposed to run, and the helicopter was still 8 minutes out. Sarah didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the abandoned enemy position they'd just cleared, sliding through broken glass and debris. The SEALs shouted for her to stop, but she was already at the enemy's abandoned rocket launcher. In one fluid motion that would have impressed her old Spetsnaz instructor, she checked the weapon, calculated the angle needed to ricochet the rocket off a metal water tower, and fired. The rocket curved impossibly through the air, banking off the tower at the exact angle to strike the technical from above, where its armor was weakest. The explosion lit up the desert as Sarah calmly walked back to the stunned team, adjusting her cracked glasses. But she wasn't done. Using the enemy's own communication network that she'd been monitoring, she coordinated a false retreat order in perfect Arabic to a different enemy cell approaching from the east. Then, switching to Pashto, she contacted what the enemies believed was their air support, redirecting them to wrong coordinates miles away. When the extraction helicopter finally arrived, SEAL Team 7 boarded in complete silence, watching Sarah as she calmly filed her after-action report as if she hadn't just saved all their lives with skills that exceeded even their elite training. Back at base, the debrief room was packed. Word had already spread about what happened in the field. Admiral Chen, commander of Naval Special Warfare Group, had flown in personally after reviewing the helmet cam footage that captured everything. Lieutenant Harris stood at attention, his face pale as the Admiral played back Sarah's tactical commands on the main screen. The precision, the language skills, the strategic thinking that had saved the entire team, it was all there in undeniable detail. The Admiral turned to Sarah, who stood quietly in the corner, still in her dust-covered gear. "Specialist Mitchell," he began, then stopped. "No, that's not right anymore." He pulled out an official document. "Your father contacted me. He finally told us about your training in Prague, about Instructor Volkov, and about the 12 years you spent mastering what most of our operators learn in fragments." The room was dead silent as the Admiral continued. "You didn't just save this team. You executed tactical maneuvers that we teach at the highest levels of command training. Effective immediately, you're promoted to Lieutenant Commander, and you'll be taking over tactical operations for SEAL Team 7. Harris's jaw dropped. The same men who had forced her to do their laundry, who had laughed at her suggestions, who had called her weak, they were now standing at attention as she became their commanding officer. Sarah stepped forward, finally allowing herself to stand at her full height, no longer hiding behind the facade of weakness. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice steady and commanding, "I believe you have some laundry that needs washing. Consider it tradition." The Admiral's smile was barely contained as Harris and his team slowly realized the tables had completely turned. But then Sarah's expression softened slightly. "But we won't be doing that anymore. A team is only as strong as how it treats its weakest member. And from now on, in my unit, there are no weak members, only operators who haven't yet shown their full potential." 6 months later, SEAL Team 7 had the highest mission success rate in naval special warfare history. Sarah Mitchell's unconventional tactics and ability to see 10 moves ahead had transformed them from good to legendary. The same men who had once dismissed her now studied her every move, trying to learn the strategic thinking that had made her one of the youngest and most decorated commanders in Navy history. And in the mess hall, where they once made her eat alone, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell now held court, teaching young operators that sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't strength or speed. It's the strategic mind that everyone underestimates.
Before you go, tell us in the comments, which country are you watching this video from? And don't forget to subscribe to Her Force Tales for more incredible stories, and hit like, share, and comment to support the channel.